Roll Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the awesome organizations that make this show possible. Rowdy Gaines is in the flesh. I've been looking forward to this for so long. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm really excited to geek out on swimming with you.
I'm more excited than you are, my friend. I just told you before we went on.
That.
Yeah, no, man. I've been a big fan for a long time.
So we're recording this, I think we're 2 days out from the formal swimming in the pool competition being complete. We still have open water on the horizon. You're going to be calling that. But as the voice of swimming, you just, that was an endurance event, what you went through. The amount of energy that you give, like on the daily to the experience to, keep it really exciting for everybody at home is really something to marvel at. I mean, does that drain you? Do you get energy from that? I would think you would be exhausted right now.
Yeah, I am. Most Olympic Games, I literally sleep for like 24 hours afterwards. I mean, I get up for a couple hours and then go back to sleep. But this one, Rich, was completely different because I didn't have to do preliminaries. Dan and I just did the finals, first games that I had never done the preliminaries. So it really helped for the energy levels because I was able to sleep. I mean, I go back to Athens, for example. I think we were sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night, and so it was running on fumes by the end. But this case, even though we didn't get back to the hotel till 2 or 3 in the morning, we could wake up at 10:45 and watch prelims on TV, or I'd go down there every once in a while and just have a lot more energy because of sleep. That was the primary thing.
Yeah. This is the first Olympics that I've ever attended, and it's been incredible to actually go to finals. I went to finals on 3 evenings.
Oh, you did swimming?
To see it live. Yeah. I was there.
Cool.
I was there.
That's awesome.
Not every night, but but 3 of them. And it was really remarkable to, experience it in person. But in between, like I'm running around like an idiot doing all kinds of stuff here.
I can imagine.
I'm way more unplugged from the results than I would be had I been sitting on my couch at home watching it on TV. And the one thing that I've been missing is you calling the races. Like I'm there watching it, but I don't have Rowdy in my, in as part of that experience. So
Lucky
I
you.
actually didn't see you call any races aside from scrolling through your Instagram and seeing some clips here and there on the NBC feed and your feed. So that's been a little bit different. Yeah. So I missed that. Like that's what you miss when you're witnessing it live.
You're very fortunate.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, definitely are.
But the other thing that's been cool is, we're of a certain generation. I'm basically your age. I'm a couple of years younger than you.
More than that.
And I was really plugged into all the athletes and all the backstories of basically every single swimmer from the mid-1980s through maybe the mid-2000s. And now I'm at a certain age where I'm just, I'm not paying quite as much attention to the sport as I used to.
Sure.
But it's been really fun to kind of plug back in and learn about all these kids and their stories. And I had the opportunity to do a bunch of interviews with a bunch of the Speedo swimmers over the last couple of days and getting to know them. So that's like refreshed my, interest in the sport.
Right. Isn't that great? I mean, and I think even though we are from a different generation, you're much younger than I am, but
not really.
We all have that sense of commonality, if that's a word, of familiarity, of brother and sisterhood, because I think at the end of the day, we all kind of know what we have gone through being a swimmer. You were a swimmer. And even though the sport has changed dramatically over these generations, the basic, training and heartache and grinding away is still the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to get into how it's changed and how it hasn't, but maybe let's put a pin in that for now. With respect to Paris itself, this is your 8th games that you've called?
This is my ninth
games.
with NBC, my 8th with Dan Higgs. So we started together in 96. Right. I started, believe it or not, and you might remember this, in 92 with the Triple Cast.
Yeah.
It was an NBC property, kind of ahead of its time, but I called the cable side of things and started over the air in 96.
So 9th Olympiad. What was different about Paris? What made this experience unique as compared to some of the other ones?
Good question. I think first and foremost, Paris. You know, the city is so iconic. And I'm not saying cities like Athens and Sydney and Atlanta and all, they don't have really special qualities. They do. All of them are iconic in one way or another. But Paris is, you know, dude, I mean, this place is just magical. I mean, beach volleyball on the steps of the Eiffel Tower. So plus 15,000 people, mostly French, and Léon Marchand, it just made the place so electric night in and night out. Did you go at any night?
Yeah, I did. I was on the evening that he did the double.
Oh.
And, you know,
dude,
the French fans just losing their minds.
You picked the best night.
Yeah, it was really something special.
Well, you know, I mean, so I think that differentiates it a little bit. The last one I can remember was probably Sydney with Ian Thorpe and how electric that place was. But it's been a long time since since the place was that energized with emotion.
Has France ever had such a successful swimming Olympics?
Not since I've called. I'm sure they have probably in history, but I mean, you go back to the last time it was there, they probably did, but no, nothing close to what they did here. And it wasn't just Léon. I mean, you know, flow and relays, and they were, you know, time and time again that a lot of the French swimmers stepped up. And I can guarantee you that if we did this Olympic Games, somebody like Léon would not have performed as well. I'm not saying he wouldn't have won 4 gold medals, but my betting side of things would have said, I don't think he would have won all 4. I think that crowd willed him to victory in that 200 fly. And 200 IM, 400 IM, he would have won. But that 200 fly,
but the way he came behind, dude, I mean, it was not a given that he was going to win that race by any stretch.
And I can feel, because I can say that with all confidence, because I swam in a home Olympics.
Yeah. And
I shouldn't have won. I could swim that race 10 times in LA, and I would have lost 9 of them.
Well, we're definitely going to get into that.
But my point is I think that's what differentiated, to your question, Paris with all the other Olympic Games. And the U.S. underperformed in many respects, especially on the men's side. But when you're talking the global side of the Olympics, this was right up there.
Yeah. Team USA, I wouldn't say they had a bad meet. Not the best meet, though, right? The men had yet to win an individual gold medal at the pool until Bobby Fink, astonishingly broke the world record in the 1,500 meter freestyle. I mean, what a performance! You know, what a great exclamation point. I imagine he was probably shouldering quite a bit of pressure. You know, we need at least 1 gold.
Right.
But when was the last time Team USA had only won 1 gold medal on the men's side? I mean, it has to have been
a long time, my friend. God, we said that stat on TV, and I can't even remember. Have you ever done that where you do a podcast and like you study for it and you get so much out of the person you're talking to, and then 20 minutes you walk out and go, what's your name again?
Yeah, I know. Or, you know, a year later or some months later, somebody says, oh, when you said that thing, or we're talking to that person on the, and you said that, and you said that, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
So I don't remember when, but it was a long time. And I think that the men have some work cut out for them as we head to LA. But I was asked this question this morning, Elizabeth. And I said, you know what? The men are going to be just fine. It's a young team. We've got kids like Thomas Heilman, Maximus Williamson, who you've never heard of, but he's a kid that, 17, 18 years old. I think in 4 years, the men are going to be set up really well for LA. And plus a home Olympics and all that. Women are fine. They're going to be great. Yeah. But the men will be fine.
My sense is that it was a unique team because you had all of these superstars who are kind of in the twilight of their career, who are hanging on, but are kind of past their peak performances.
Yep.
And then you have this new crop of very young swimmers who are exciting, but are still probably 2 years away from making the cut that gets people to pay attention. So it's this weird, like, liminal space. We're in between, generations, I think.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the results. But to your point, I think it is exciting when you look at Jack Alexey and Josh Leenda. Like, these people are going to be big stars in 28, I think.
No question
Chris
about
Giuliano.
it. And
there's
I'm
a lot
glad
of
you
young talent.
brought up Chris, Giuliano and Jack Alexey, because those are two future superstars in sprint freestyle. And that's what the United States needs. They need a Caleb Dressel or, a Michael Phelps to be able to kind of hang their hat on relays. The men only won one relay. I say only. They won one out of three. Still not bad, but usually you expect that kind of dominance for the United States when Michael was on board. I mean, they lost very, very few relays, so they need a guy that they can count on those sprint relays, the mixed relay. And they put together a great 800 free relay, and they've got a good nucleus for that. That's how one of the ways I measure a country's success is the relays, because it really determines your versatility. The medley relay, the hundreds and 200s, it's really where that's like college. A coach is going to recruit an average sprinter versus a great distance swimmer. It's not fair, but it's all because of relays, and that's not exactly the way it goes for the Olympics, but it's still a very important part of the success of a country at an Olympic Games.
But what do you think the conversations are in the boardrooms at USA Swimming and, the kind of powers that be who are now, we're a couple days out. We got to look back into the rearview mirror and kind of deconstruct what happened and try to, build for the future. What are those? What are they? How are they going to do that?
Well, I have no idea, because I am not part of any of that.
Yeah, but you know all these people.
But I know all these people. But one thing I would say, if I was advising, take your time. Let's not rush into anything. Let's get the data. That's the first thing. Get the data down. How many people went PBs? What was the training camp like? Make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you start to make those changes that are necessary, because I do think changes are necessary. I really do. I don't know what those changes are off the top of my head. I can think of one.
You going to let us know what that one is?
Yeah, why not? I don't care. What are they going to do, fire me?
Nobody's going to fire you, Rowdy.
I think you have to get Michael Phelps back into the fold. I think you need to do whatever you can to get the greatest swimmer of all time, greatest Olympian of all time, in my opinion, back into a key strategic position in the sport. There's nobody, if he walked into a room of junior national kids, it would be incredibly motivational and inspiring. So Michael and I have talked. He's going to get after me on this probably, but we haven't discussed any specifics. But I've actually gone to him and said, we got to get you back in the sport. He hasn't been involved very much, a little bit, but not enough.
Right. Not as a coach, but you mean in some leadership capacity. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Some sort of advisory role where he is a big part of the national team and junior national team, because we need to build for that future. Because I just texted this to him. I mean, his legacy is already set. He could walk away and never appear in public ever again, and his legacy is set. He changed the sport more dramatically than anything or anybody in the history of our sport. But he could create another legacy. I think he's starting to do that on the water safety side of things, certainly on the
mental health
drug
stuff.
issue. I mean, we just read that article about him going to Capitol Hill and testifying. I think it was awesome that he came out and said those kinds of things. But I also think from the national team perspective, especially as we head to LA, it would be really cool for him to kind of move in that direction. And I have a plan.
It sounds like it would be something that he would be very interested in doing. I mean, his love for the sport is very earnest. Like, you know, it's been so great to see him, you know, with you in the booth, but also just all the social media. Like, he's very happy to be here. He is not only, you know, the most successful and sort of charismatic swimmer, you know, of this generation, but also, or of his generation, but also its greatest evangelist. Like, he knows how to get people, like you do, like knows how to get people really excited about the sport.
And he knows so much. I mean, if you saw him in the 400 IM, well, you didn't because you
I did. Yeah, I missed out on all that.
He's such a great analyst. You know, he could kick me out of the booth anytime.
Who is gonna when you retire in 28? Who's it gonna be?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Do you get to be involved in appointing your successor?
She's awesome.
She's great.
Elizabeth
she's really
Beisel,
good.
she's a dear, dear friend, and I love her so much, like another daughter, you know. But I think she's destined for more greatness than just being, you know, an analyst in swimming. I think I said the same thing to Summer Sanders back in '96 when she did it with me and Dan. She called the women, I called the men, and you know, she didn't really like it very much. So Elizabeth likes it okay, but she doesn't like, you know, she wants to do something else. And I told Summer, you're destined for greatness. You know, the camera loves you. You're so well spoken. You've got so much personality, and Elizabeth is just like that. So I can see her becoming a host of a TV show or a game show. I mean, I don't know.
She's definitely a natural for that.
But getting back to who it's going to be, I have no idea. Part of me feels like it should be a woman because it's been a man for so long. But I also think it needs to be somebody that provides the best amount of knowledge along with the energy, especially on the Olympic level, because I don't get into the weeds with too much of the technical side of things when I commentate at the Olympics. First of all, because I don't know as much as somebody like Michael.
But you also have to speak to the everyman who doesn't know anything about the sport and make it relatable.
They don't know anything about the starting block. People ask me all the time, what are those flags that go across the pool? I mean, so that's who we have to speak to and try to bring people in and create energy for it and tell them make them feel how much you love it. So it has to be somebody like that. Somebody like Cody Miller. I've told Cody Miller he'd be great. Ryan Murphy's awesome. Lily King, you know, she would be awesome. Katie one day. But Lily says she's not going to another Olympics, but I don't buy that. I think she will. And Katie's going to keep some. So I have no idea.
You mentioned earlier how swimming has changed a lot, but it's also fundamentally the same. When you look at the times, I don't know about you, but like I can't even relate to how fast these people are swimming. And I now kind of measure my performances against the women. You know, like I just can't fathom how these people are swimming so fast. To what do you attribute that? Like, is it changes in sports science, in training? Like, what is driving like these margins where we continue to see improvements? I mean, this Olympics was a little bit different. Probably the least, were there 2 or 3 world records total? Like that's, you know, abnormal. We can get into that. But by and large, you know, every year, every Olympic cycle, like these records just continue to get eclipsed.
Yeah. Well, we'll back up and tell you the biggest reason. That doesn't have to do with the sports science of thing. The biggest reason there's 2. The biggest reason is money. When we swam, there was no money in the sport. In fact, when I swam in 1984, you were not allowed to accept money. It was like the NCAA type rules a few years ago. So I was 25 when I won. I was the 3rd oldest swimmer in history to win.
I remember in '84 when you were swimming, and the whole narrative was like, he's so old.
Washed up.
You were 25.
Yeah. And I was hanging on by a thin thread, too, at 25. But now you can earn a living. Most swimmers that are swimming that are out of college still are living, you know, hand to mouth and are not making much money. I think the average athlete makes $25,000 a year that's swimming, that is not in that
upper
Mount
tier.
Rushmore type atmosphere, stratosphere. But money has kept the athletes in longer. So you see more swimmers in the water past the age of 21. Mark Spitz quit when he was 21. John Neighbor was 21. They all retired after college. So that's one reason there are more bodies in the water to be able to provide that. And the second reason are the underwaters. From the physical side of things, we didn't have underwaters, right? I mean, I'd pop up right at the flags. Didn't have dolphin kick, and
that was just starting when I was swimming.
Right. Exactly.
I swam with Sean Murphy, who then in the '88 games, that was really the coming out party with Dave Burkhoff.
That's right.
And the Burkhoff blast and all of that.
Yeah. Brian Redditor was so good underwater. So that's changed the sport because somebody like Marchand spends, on the 200 fly, he'll spend 60 meters underwater. And it's faster than being above the water. And so those are the two. I think personally, I tell you the truth, I don't know the sports science side of things. I'm not that smart, but I know that's changed. And also, from what I understand, video analysis. We didn't have video analysis. There was no videotaping of our stroke. We'd get the 8 millimeter or whatever it was and look at grainy, but now they can break things down very, very specifically with their stroke technique. And I'll have all kinds of bells and whistles on that side of things. So from that side, nutrition, obviously, training, we swim. I don't know about you, but you're quick. Okay, we're all going 10-200s, ready to go. Breaststrokers, sprinters, distance. We all did the same thing. And now it's much more specialized. That's what made Marchand so amazing. And Regan Smith, first time in history ever to win 200 fly and 200 back in the same, or win a medal in the 200 fly, 200 back. But ordinarily, you'll have athletes like Flo Manitou that just swims a 50, hangs on in 100. Nick Fink just swims, he tries to swim the 100 and 200, but just made the 100. So it's much more specialized.
Yeah. Also, a lot of these athletes are a lot larger. I mean, Jack Alexie's like 6'7", I think.
Dude, crazy.
These guys are huge. So there's that also. But I think the training really has evolved. Like we were of the era of, slogging it out, going hard on every set, and it was just volume, right?
Yeah.
Even yourself, 100-meter specialists, like sprinters training like endurance athletes, just putting in an unreal amount of mileage, of yardage every single day. And I didn't realize how much it had evolved. And I've told this story before, but I've had a couple opportunities to drop in on the workouts at USC where some of the post-grads who are kind of training for the Olympics have been when Urbanchek was on deck, who was a friend, and got to like mix it up with those guys a little bit. Like when like Lochte was there, a bunch of those guys, Connor Dwyer and some other ones. And I didn't even understand what was happening in the workout. It was all about explosiveness off the walls, all about the turns, all about the kick, and all these contraptions where you're, pulleys and all this kind of stuff. So it was all about acceleration and power. And I'm like, when are we going to do 10-200s? That's just not part of it anymore.
Isn't that so crazy to think that that's the norm now? I mean, this guy that won the 50 freestyle, read about his workouts, Cameron McAvoy from Australia. All he does is fast swimming. I mean, he'll warm up very little, and then just all he does is speed work.
Yeah, but look at what they're doing on the track. I mean, that's what the 100-meter
but they've been doing that a long
guys
time.
For a long
We've
time.
We've finally taken a page off
and
the
so
track.
Why did it take so long to figure out? Like if you're swimming a race that takes you, 18 seconds, you don't need to be going 20,000 meters a day.
And we did.
Right?
We did. I'd put in 15, 20,000. And but it's a different animal now. But I think that's a good point that you make about athletes being bigger and stronger. I was talking to, I can't remember who it was, but it was an ex-pro football player. He had just retired. And he was telling me that a Lawrence Taylor wouldn't even make an NFL team today. That's how much bigger, stronger, faster they are compared to that generation ago. So I'm sure it just holds true.
It's across
in every
the board.
sport.
I think I saw the other day that the 8th place finisher in the men's 100 meters on the track was faster than Carl Lewis ran. Yeah. So, this is just the evolution of
the
humans.
Human body.
Right?
That's why, I was a senior in high school, first time somebody broke 50. I broke 20 in the 50 freestyle. Joe Bottom, 19.7. And then I was at Auburn when somebody broke 19, Freddie Bousquet for the first time. He went 18-7. And then, of course, I was commentating on Caleb Dressel when he went 17-8, I think it was.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah. So in 15 years, 10, 15 years, there'll be somebody breaking 17. People ask me, well, when's it going to stop? It has to stop at some point.
I know. We keep thinking, every generation thinks they're up at the edge of it, right?
You're on the edge of this stuff. When is it?
I don't know. I mean, I think...
It won't be in my lifetime.
I think we'll continue to see breakthroughs, and I think there's all these emerging technologies. I mean, you mentioned videotaping stroke, but now they can like examine like the hydraulics of your stroke. They can get really granular on like how to perfect stroke. Like we just get in and swim. Well, this feels right or whatever. But I'm sure there's a lot of improvements that can be found with using like science and these these sort of AI learning models to like evaluate all of these kinds of things that the human eye can't even detect.
Right, and I don't think I'll be around.
Well, at least not commentating.
No.
But let's get into your story a little bit. I mean, there's so many interesting things about your journey, not the least of which is you didn't even start swimming until you were 17, which is incredibly late.
Yeah, I loved sports as a kid, but when I got to high school, I wasn't very good at anything, so I just kept getting cut. I tried out for football, baseball, basketball, golf, and tennis. My sophomore and junior years, we didn't have ninth grade, was still part of middle school, and I just got cut. And along the way, we were just talking about it, I was going down a path that, was a bit dark and not the best way to lead a life as a 16, 17-year-old, and one last sport, swimming. In fact, the day I went out for the swim team, I went to the library, obviously, library back then, and checked out a book on track and field to say, maybe I could try track just in case. I figured it wasn't going to work. I was going to get cut. And, but swimming stuck, and it changed my life. So I grew up in Florida, knew how to swim, Rich, I mean, water was part of my DNA. It's part of the fabric of who I am growing up. My greatest memories are around water. My parents water skied for a place called Cypress Gardens. We lived on the same lake. They would take the boat across the lake to work every day and back. But I just never did it competitively until I got to high school.
I had heard you share about this with the Unfiltered Waters podcast girls.
Oh, Kate and Missy.
Katie and Missy.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that your decision to try out for swimming was motivated by this friend that you had who had some ocular issues, like he was eye challenged or something like that.
Very true.
And he was your buddy, and you kind of went into it together, thinking you were just doing it
to help him
out of solidarity with your friend.
Very true. He was, I miss him every day. There isn't a day I don't think about him. He passed away, got a year after our high school, not to get into the weeds with it, but he was struck by lightning while water skiing and passed away. Whoa. Yeah, so it was a tragic ending to a life, and just a great guy. We used to take him driving, my buddies and I. Turned 16, I got my parents' station wagon. We'd take him to a mall parking lot and let him drive, He was completely blind in one eye, 90% in the other. So he was, he was legally blind, but he wanted to try out for the swim team, and I said I'd help him. And, this is January in Florida, the water's cold. There are no heated pools in Florida. And so we'd go in his backyard, and I remember swimming in this 10-foot pool, it seemed like. And then we'd go out and sit in the sun and try to warm up. We'd swim in there for about 10 minutes and go warm up. And finally got up the nerve to try out for the swim team when tryouts happened. And we both made it. He didn't stick with it.
And the coach the swim coach was the same coach as the football coach that had cut you?
Yeah. Same guy. Coach Bill Woolwine, still alive, still coaching, great friend to this day, 45 or so years later. He kind of felt sorry for me. And I said, I'll let you hang. Did you hear about that story where we had a swim meet 2 weeks after I started? I still didn't. Rich, I swam with my head up. I was like that one of those 8 and unders running into the lane lines, and he put me on an E relay, not an A, B, C, or D relay, honest to God truth. I was on there with a chess club guy and a couple band members, but I outsplit everybody on the team. It was 200 free relay, and so it was like it was a moment for him, like, oh, this guy might be pretty good. And for me, it was a moment of I just didn't get cut. It wasn't. I didn't start thinking about.
But just the right amount of validation for this kid that loves sports that finally found something where maybe he might have some potential.
It's exactly to the epitome of how I felt.
But how long before it locked in, like, oh, maybe there's even something more here? Because as I understand it, it was only like 2.5 years between that moment and you breaking your first world record, which is insane.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Started in February of 76 and broke 2 world records on relays in the summer of 78. So yeah, I guess about 2.5 years, yeah.
From a kid who was swimming with his head out of the water to breaking world records with a coach who is fundamentally a football coach.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm still trying to understand how this happened.
He had no idea what he was doing. I mean, he ended up quitting football coaching and just doing swimming. But we both started. Literally, it was his first year, my first year, and we were learning together. But it happened fast. I was blessed. You know, the Lord blessed me, Rich, in many ways to be able to have that kind of, I feel, talent. And once I found out that this was the sport I fell in love with, I was going to do everything in my power to get better at it. Going to the library and checking out books. I check out stacks of books. I remember reading Mark Spitz's 50-Meter Jungle, Deep Water by Don Scholander, checking out books by Doc Councilman, and I just immersed myself into the sport. I sent 50 letters to colleges, finding out what I need to do to get a scholarship, and all of them said, "Hey, you need to start training two-a-days." Well, we didn't do two-a-days, so I would.
And there was no club team in Winter Haven.
No club team. I mean, our high school, and so I would sneak into motels, not hotels, motels, and swim in their heated pool. And there were like 4 or 5 of them. So I'd sneak in one, last about a week, get kicked out, and then go to another one, and then go to another one.
Wow.
Ride my bike to it. I still hadn't had my license yet. So those are the kinds of things that I did because I just fell in love with it. It wasn't like I still had no dreams of being an Olympian. I just wanted to get better. And I didn't even think about college scholarship yet. These people told me these are the things you had to do to get better, so I would.
Did you have a conscious sense or awareness that this was like sort of a path of salvation for you? I mean, you mentioned, you were kind of going down a darker path. You'd found this thing. You clearly understood that you held some promise and that this could be like a path away from that other, was that happening unconsciously or consciously?
No question. Absolutely. I knew, well, I just said, I was close. I knew I was close to something that, if I look back on it now, it would have been tough,
Like self-destructive,
yeah,
like
definitely
drugs and alcohol, or like crime, or what are we talking about here? Wow.
All of the above. I don't know about crime. I didn't do anything criminal.
But you were just wayward. You
sneak into motels.
Where were mom and dad during that time?
Mom and dad. My mom was there. My parents were, and my dad still is. My mom passed away, but my mom and dad were always there for me. But they went out. My parents divorced when I was little, so I lived with my mom, and she'd go out. She's remarried. I love my stepfather. I had a great upbringing from that side of things. But I just, my friends were awesome. We just started drinking at first, but I could just tell my inner being was that, you have the
wolf, yeah. Which wolf is
both
talking
shoulders,
loudest?
and that guy that was the bad guy was kind of leading things and said, do this, yeah, and but I don't blame anybody but myself. There was nobody leading me down that path. My friends were great. They were innocent. My parents were awesome. There was nobody that was pointing me down that dark direction except myself.
Hey everybody, today's episode is brought to you by Seed Gut Health. I talk about it all the time on the podcast. You know it's important. If you've even listened to a few of my podcasts, I think I've maybe devoted, a dozen, 2 dozen episodes to the microbiome. You got to take care of your gut health if you want to have optimal health. How do you do that? Well, your nutrition, your lifestyle habits, sleep, all of these things play into that. But it's also important to find a really good prebiotic and probiotic. How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of nonsense out there, so you got to follow the science. And the best evidence-based product that I found out there is Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. I've been taking it for, over 3 years at this point, every single day. There's just a tremendous amount of science behind this product. I urge you to check it out. And right now, it's a great time to do that because you can get 25% off your first month of Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic. Hit the link in the description below to visit seed.com/richroll and use code RICHROLL25. Get on it.
When you look back now, obviously, in the rearview mirror, everything kind of makes sense. You're like, well, this happened and then this happened, and this is the way it was meant to be. But do you extract meaning from that? I know you talk to people all over the country and travel and do a lot of public speaking. And I think, a lot of people go through some version of that in their life, and either they take that left turn or they take that right turn. But not everybody, stumbles into something that makes them an Olympic champion. So how do you kind of share the wisdom of that experience in a helpful way for other people?
I guess it's my belief that, and this sounds so corny, but I think we are all put on this earth for a very specific purpose, whether you believe in God or not. I think there's no way we are just kind of thrown down here. And, I think we all have a gift to share with the world. And sometimes it takes longer for others to discover that gift, and sometimes they never do. And for me, I just try to, I try to tell people, that there's no reason for anybody to tell you you're any different than me. I was a skinny little kid from Winter Haven, Florida. I lived 6 miles out on a dirt road and, grew up in very humble beginnings. But I wish I had something much more philosophical to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's really about, I think my advice has always been, not to have this whole weight of the world on your shoulders. I think for a long time I did that. I thought, some things of my childhood that were, again, had nothing to do with my family, but just something happened that I just can't talk about quite yet. But at some point I will. But after that happened, it was like, the guilt and the shame and putting all that on my shoulder, never being able to talk to anybody. And instead of relying on the people that love you and care for you so much. And that's what I ended up finally doing is like, it's okay to have people help and support you. It started, early on as my family. And then, when I met my wife, she was, a huge part of that. I've been able to talk to her about many of the things that happened to me, and she's been my rock in many ways. So it's taken a long time, dude. I mean, it's
but every instinct when you're in that is to push it down and compartmentalize it, and like really just like be in this relationship with shame, right? And never tell anybody what's going on. And,
I still live with that, though, Rich. It's still not
hard.
It still had, and that's why I try. I still live with that shame and that guilt, so, I do. And it, it's there, but, fortunately I've, therapy has helped, and, my wife is, helped a lot. So I think, I think it's going to be okay. And that's what I try to tell other people, my own children, my own grandchildren. I just had a conversation with one of my daughters, and she was just having a bad day. And just, I said, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay, And I couldn't really say anything that helped too much.
But just being there.
Yeah.
It was said to me early on that shame can't survive the light, and as much as we want to, keep those things in abeyance, it's only in kind of releasing them and sharing them that we can find some peace and freedom in it.
Yeah.
But it holds on tight, man. And I think it's, thank you for sharing that. It's not easy to talk about these things.
No, it's not.
But I think it's I think it's helpful and empowering for other people to hear. Like,
I've heard you talk about that.
We all go through shit, man.
Dude, I heard you last night.
These dark moments can be
talking about
amazing
this subject.
teachers. Yeah. So because I've heard you say many, many, many times, like, swimming saved my life. But I think, I have a deeper understanding of just how true that is, I think, for you. So
I've never talked about it before, so not in that kind of depth.
And it not only did it save your life, it gave you an entirely new one.
Yeah.
So you end up at Auburn. Did you have a sense when you arrived there that Richard Quick? I mean, like, you're going from basically this football coach turned, and then now you have Richard Quick early in his career, obviously. Who would go on to just be one of the absolute legends and icons of swimming coach history, right? And he really, set you up for tremendous success.
Yeah, he did. And believe it or not, Rich, and a lot of people remember this, but Eddie Reese recruited me.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was at Auburn.
Oh.
And he coached at Auburn before he went to Texas. So Eddie recruited me out of high school. He was one of only 2 schools to recruit me. Mm-hmm. I wrote letters to 50 schools and didn't get recruited by Western Kentucky and Auburn. And Eddie would call me all my senior year, and it's a long story, but he had seen me swim somewhere and knew that I had the potential. Eddie is. I mean, he's like...
Sure. Yeah, this isn't like a swimming podcast. There's a lot of people have no idea who that is.
Eddie Reese is.
Eddie
he's the greatest
be,
college swim coach in history.
At Texas, and just, basically oversaw a dynasty for decades.
We have Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Right? He's in that top. Mount Rushmore. Mm-hmm. And so I swam with him my freshman year, and certainly flourished and then he went to Texas, and then Richard came in. And so I had the best of both worlds. I had that beginning with Eddie, and then I had the rest of the way with Richard. And he went to Texas, not to get into details, but he coached the women. Mm-hmm. Eddie was coaching the men. So after I graduated from Auburn, I went down to Austin and spent 2 years with both of them. Mm-hmm. And I'd swim with Richard mostly, but also swim with Eddie too. So I had 2 of the greatest coaches in history coach me those last 2 years.
And what if you could sort of crystallize the wisdom that you learned from them, not just a sport level, but on a life level? Like, what did those guys teach you that you still carry with you today?
Well, from Eddie's standpoint, the sense of humor, deprecation, of perspective, he was so good at that. Colin tells that story where Eddie, he was the head coach in 2008, and that 400 free relay, and they're getting ready to go out. Michael Phelps going for 8 gold medals. Jason Lezak anchoring. The story of that relay. A lot of people do, even if you don't know swimming. And the last thing he said to the guys when they were walking out, he goes, "Don't F it up."
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of and it really helped me. And when I was like wide-eyed, it helped me with that sense of humor. And obviously his knowledge is just amazing. He had the knack of that perfect taper. For Richard, I think everybody needs that that person in their life that they can go to outside of the pool. And Richard was my second father. I love the man more than I can ever begin to tell you. And talk about there isn't a day that goes by. There really isn't that I don't think of Richard and his love and his passion for the sport. I mean, you knew him, and he was. I learned a lot about passion for what we have in our sport from him, and the love of it, and the ability to. I mean, I remember him saying, "You have to eliminate the NT words from your vocabulary. We are not going to say can't, don't, won't, etc. We are going to be positive in every respect." And I was a bit of a negative guy, you know. I was still kind of up and down, and it never was perfect, obviously, but he helped transform that in a big way.
What do you think are the qualities that define the best coaches? Like, what is the ultimate coach in your mind as somebody who's been around sport and elite performance for so long?
Well, I think the number of people that you have talked to, you probably know that better than I know you know that better than I do. But for me personally, I think patience is a really big thing for me. I need somebody that, you know, this sport will chew you up, man. And you really need patience for that pupil of yours. You need to have the wherewithal to be able to understand what they're going through. Richard certainly had that in so many ways. Eddie did too, but spent most of my career with Richard. And I think for Richard, I think for a coach in general, you cannot be afraid to fail. You have to take risks. I think that status quo type coach is going to fall into, oh, it worked this year, so it's going to work next year, you know? And Richard never did that. If we were successful one year, he was still not afraid to experiment the next year, try something different in a taper or in a set or something in the weight room, dry land, you know? He was constantly experimenting, you know? And that's tough to do, you know? And I think the last thing is to be able to have that trust, to build that trust with that athlete. That athlete has to trust that coach implicitly. Can I tell you a very quick story? I swam the third day of the Olympics, and that's a long story. I'll make it short. But I started the track start, you know. I was the first swimmer.
You were the only one doing it.
In 84, yeah. And, but the whole idea was in 82, I had a really bad start at the World Championships where I first started it. And so for the next 2 years, man, I was the last one out of the water every day. You know, it was like my goal. I had this noble goal so for that 15 minutes every day, I'd practice my start. But I'd do the same cadence, Rich. So I'd take your mark and I'd go real slow and try to time it, you know, when the gun went off. Anyway, long story. Third day of the Olympics, back then there were 3 starters. Well, one starter, Richard noticed on the first day, was very quick. Guy from Panama, take your mark, bang. Came to me the next day, we have to change your start. You've been working on this for 2 years, but you've got to come down fast. If you don't, there's a chance, maybe not, but there's a chance that this guy starts your race. So he literally, you know, the day after the first day, that whole second day before I swam the third day, we practiced coming down quicker.
Wow. The last thing you want as an athlete at the Olympics is to change anything, right?
Dude.
Yeah. That must have freaked you out.
At the Olympics. I mean, a week before or whatever, but like a day before. But it gets back to what I was saying about trust. I trusted him implicitly. At first I was taken aback, but once he said, trust me, I was all in. So I think the trust is incredibly important.
But trust is built as a result of a relationship, right? There's something different about a coach telling a swimmer what to do, they do it and they succeed, versus like a dynamic where there's a back and forth, where the coach is listening to the athlete as much as the athlete is listening to the coach.
Fourth thing, communication.
Yeah.
Critical.
So everybody knows, or most people know, that you had this successful 1984 Olympics, 3 golds. You won the 100 freestyle, and you were on 2 gold medal winning relays, 4x100 freestyle and 4x100 medley relay. 10 world records, I think, along the way. Is that right?
Don't know. I
like
really,
that.
I couldn't tell.
I like that you don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah. But I think people
3.
probably don't appreciate the fact that you were actually at your peak in 1980 and 1981, and you were a victim of the 1980 Olympic boycott. I want to understand that. We have some mutual friends who were also members of that team. John Moffitt. I think he was 16. I think he was the youngest person to make the 80 team. He was like 16 years old. And through John and others have met others who were members of the 80 team. At the time, you were supportive of President Carter and the boycott. I know there's a documentary that just came out. There was a screening that both of us, you're a protagonist in this movie. You weren't able to go. I wasn't able to see it. But walk me through like that whole experience.
Well, the problem with the boycott, for those that are not older enough to remember, was our country decided not to attend the Olympic Games, which were in Moscow in Russia, because the Russians had invaded another country, Afghanistan, ironically. And so at that time, our country thought, they were hoping for 2 things to happen. A, for the Olympics to be moved from Russia to another country, another city, or B, influence the Russians to leave Afghanistan. And it's just hard for me to believe, and hindsight's a beautiful thing, that somebody much smarter than me say, this is not going to work, guys. Hey, you really think the Russians loved it that we didn't come? Because their propaganda promoted more medals for them. They loved it. They didn't have a problem with it because they could promote what they wanted to. And the second thing is, do you really think the Russians were going to leave Afghanistan because we weren't going to the Olympics? Do you think Putin really cares that his athletes weren't able to come to Paris?
It's hard to imagine that now with our kind of fractured attention spans. It was a monoculture there. I mean, the world really did stop when the Olympics were going on in a way that isn't the case now.
No.
But even so, it's such a stretch.
Yeah, and again, I understand my hindsight on it all, but the best scenario would have been to go over there and kick their ass, and then it would have been a much better situation for us that we could promote and they would see and they could not deny. It didn't happen, obviously. So the problem with us is it's every 4 years. We don't have a World Series or Super Bowl. It's the Olympics, and it is every 4 years. And an athlete's life can come and go in a span of 4 years. Imagine playing the Super Bowl every 4 years. It's sort of like World Cup in soccer. That's why it's so big, because it's so rare. And I had my day in the sun. I was blessed because I had 1984. The real true heroes, the ones that I constantly think of, are the ones like Craig Beardsley, who we were talking about. A lot of your audience probably doesn't know who Craig Beardsley is, but he would have won the gold medal by 1.5 seconds in 1980, one of the greatest swimmers in history. He gets third at our Olympic trials. They take the top 2 only in 1984 and will always be a part of that ghost Olympic team. So, yeah, the boycott broke my heart in many ways. But again, I feel very fortunate and blessed that I had 84.
In the wake of that, I mean, I think you were like World Swimmer of the Year in
1980.
1980. So, I mean, this really was meant to be like this was your moment, right? And you were stripped of it. Did that take you back to some of the, harder kind of emotional spaces that you would work so hard to, kind of graduate from as a teenager?
It did a little bit, Rich, but I will tell you, I was 21 in 1980. That spring and summer. And, my times that year would have won 5 gold medals. You never know when you get there. But again, I was so young. I didn't know what the Olympics were. I remember I just started swimming 4 years earlier. So I knew I missed something big, but I didn't realize, Olympics. Okay, I've got NCAAs next year. So I didn't appreciate it until after 84. It was more heartbreaking, believe it or not, after I had the experience of 1984, knowing what I missed in 80, and so many others obviously missed in 80. I mean, I knew it was big, and I was heartbroken and all of that. I had taken a whole year off of school, basically, to train for the game. So if I had to do it all over again, I certainly wouldn't have done that. And but I didn't have the real breakdown like so many did, because I was still pretty young and felt like I've got my senior in college. College swimming was much more important to me anyway.
Sure, but at 21 or however old you were when you graduate from college, swimming is done. Yep. Nobody was continuing to swim.
Nope. And I quit too.
Yeah,
I retired.
Not only because there was no sponsorship dollars.
No.
You weren't allowed to even take money, even had it been made available. So nobody would continue into 22, 23, 24 at that point. So it was quite radical for you to decide, I'm gonna keep going.
It was.
Which is so difficult to wrap your head around now, because you see these medalists all over the place who are, in their late 20s and like, oh, well, they got a couple, maybe they have 2 more Olympic, it's like, that would just blow the minds of anybody back in 1984.
Yeah, I agree. But again, I lived so much in the present as a kid at 21. I didn't think so much about my future, So I was just thinking about the summer nationals and summer trials of 80. And, I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to peek ahead and know how much it affected me. But I retired after 81. For 6 months, I retired. It wasn't quit. I just retired like everybody else did. But I think it was my father who kind of came to me at the end of that 6 months. It was the end of the summer, right after my NCAA championships. That's when I retired. And he said, are you going to be able to live with yourself for the rest of your life and say, what if? Are you going to be able to look in the mirror or listen to the national anthem or watch the Olympics down the line and consistently ask yourself, what if I had done this? What if I had gone for it? And it really woke me up to saying, you know what, you're right. I need to do this win, lose, or draw. And that's when I went to Richard and said, I want to come back and try to make a run for this. And he said, you need to do this, this, and this, and let's give it a run. And it was not easy. I mean, I remember moving to Austin, Texas, and working as about a year and a half. I worked as a night clerk in a hotel. I had the 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift. Going
right to morning workout after that?
Pretty much. And then sleep all day.
Yeah.
And then go to afternoon workout and rinse and repeat.
In 1983, the rules changed a little bit, though, with respect to finances.
But it was still tough. What happened in 1983 was our sport came to us and said, you can make money. Outside of swimming, the money has to come to our federation, and you turn receipts in for your cost of living. So in the end of 83, for about 6 months, which worked perfectly, because I was flat broke, lived off macaroni and cheese and Captain Crunch cereal, I was able to turn my receipts in for my electric bill and gas for my car. It's just like you do now, right? And then I would do a clinic and make $500. I'd have to send it to USA Swimming, but then they would send me funding back.
So it had to funnel through the organization.
Yeah, it had to funnel through the organization.
Yeah. So that's so wild. I know.
I laugh about it now. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they don't even do that in college anymore, for crying out loud. High school.
Yeah. And it's funny, you go on social media and everyone's, here's how you optimize your diet performance. It's like, these guys are broke. They're eating Captain Crunch and ramen and just staying up all night, like working late shifts just so they can, how many Olympians out there who are here in Paris
there are some that
have
do
some
that.
version of that story?
Absolutely. I still think there are
there's a lot of athletes
that still have to do that.
I think there's some myth busting that has to happen.
Absolutely.
There's this idea that
question.
These guys are all, like living on big sponsor dollars. And it's really just the top
Very small.
0.1% of the athletes that you're seeing on TV, and the vast majority of everybody here has endured some version of your story in order to be here.
Especially
and had to work
those
3 or 4 2 jobs or whatever it is.
Exactly right. Especially those sports that don't get a lot of recognition at all. Rowing and weightlifting, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure they have.
Well, there's much more obscure sports than those too.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you show up at trials. You don't qualify for the team in the 200, but you do make it in the 100. You end up in 84. We don't have to rehash all of the races, but you experience Olympic glory. I'm curious now as a commentator, when you see guys like Caleb or, I don't know, the guys who are older, like, Ryan Murphy, guys who've been around for a long time. Do you have like a kind of an extra layer of empathy for those guys because of your own personal experience and knowing what it's like to, kind of like be eking it out and holding on and then, just getting that last final victory before you ride off into the sunset?
Yeah, sure. I always have a little special place in my heart for those guys that have stuck around longer than even I did. You take a look at somebody like Murph, who, guy's like an engine, man. I can't imagine going 3 Olympics. Look at Katie. I mean, it's just, crazy, unbelievable what they go through in and day out, and they have to make a living doing it pretty much, and that's tough. I didn't swim for money. I think that was fortunate. I think the pressure of swimming for money would have weighed too heavily on me. I literally swam for the love of it, but now you have to swim for the love of it and swim for money and to try to etch out a future perhaps because of swimming. So I always feel a certain amount of love for those kids that have been sticking around for a long time.
The other thing that's really hard to fully appreciate unless you've lived it is what it must be like to focus your entire life on this performance goal, all leading up to this Olympic Games, and succeed, win or lose, whatever happens. One day you're in it and there's all this attention on you and it's all about you and your performance. And then the next day, you're a civilian. And that transition has got to be extremely difficult, even for people who have done their best to prepare for it. And I think there's a lot of athletes, and I know it's changed and we can get into kind of a mental health discussion. But for those athletes who feel like it's an indulgence to even think about what you're going to do next because it's taking your eye off the ball and might undermine your performance, you can almost foresee the existential crisis on the horizon when reality sets in. And for the first time, they have to think, well, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying earlier about the fact that I was so much about living in the present, like tomorrow. Okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? Yeah, I had long-term goals, but I was just trying to get through day by day. It was just such a grind. All you could think about was just making it through the next practice. You certainly didn't have any long-term goals as far as outside the water. I mean, you knew you were getting your degree and stuff, but I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. My father was a motion picture director, and I thought I wanted to go into filmmaking somehow, but I didn't know specifics because I was so wrapped up in what I was doing. And that's the way they are now, and it's no different. And then all of a sudden it comes to an end, and it may be somewhat first world problems, but they're real first world problems. In the fact that there is a tremendous amount of letdown. And for me, I went into, real depression, I think. Back then it wasn't analyzed, or we didn't have the kind of mental health help that we do now. But man, for about 2 months, I was
it's not
suicidal
surprising.
or anything, but
I would have to believe that's an incredibly common experience. I mean, I'm reminded of the HBO documentary,
Michael,
The Weight of Gold, that Michael was behind, and Peter Carlisle.
It's a great documentary.
Which kind of goes into that whole thing. Like,
it really did. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen something about what we're talking about, you need to go watch that. That will explain everything. in an hour and a half.
I can't let you just gloss over the fact that your dad was a motion picture director. you were named from Rawhide, right?
Yeah,
Is that true?
yeah.
That's a true story.
Clint Eastwood.
Your dad, like in Florida, was directing movies?
Well, he directed a couple movies, but he mostly did television commercials. So you remember he had some commercials. You remember the Die Hard battery commercial by Sears? Frozen on a lake for 6 months.
Yeah,
he did all
that.
those.
Oh, wow.
He did all the Wausau insurance commercials. He did a lot of Chicago city commercials, Dodge trucks, Farrah Fawcett, all the Farrah Fawcett Dodge car commercials.
Wow.
She did all the Jack Nicklaus commercials for all the stuff he did. Jack liked him the best. So yeah, he was mostly a commercial television director, but he directed a film called Scuba, and another small film, and so with Lloyd Bridges, back then Lloyd Bridges.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was...
and you thought, so that was interesting to you?
Yeah,
you thought
I'd go on
might
shoots
be
with him and be a runner, and so he'd give me a stack of $20 bills, Rich, and he'd say, I need quiet on this set. He's shooting a outdoor commercial on something, and he said, I need quiet. Do what you have to do with these 20s and make sure it's quiet. So this guy start a lawnmower, I'd go give him $20, be quiet for now. Some guy start his car, and hey, you have to hear you. So yeah, sure. That's what I do.
Yeah. So then I guess it's not as much of a leap to imagine a career in broadcasting. But how did that come about for you?
I did Battle of the Network Stars swimming for a fledgling network called ESPN, like in 1985, early 85. And I did the swimming part. It was in Orlando. I got called I had an agent back then. He said, they want you to, are you interested in doing that? I said, yeah. And anyway, there's more weeds to it than that, but I just loved it and got asked to do another Battle of the Corporate Stars. And again, these were all kind of little ESPN things back in the ESPN days of, what do they call now when they show the old classic ESPN stuff? Anyway, and I did Goodwill Games, Ted Turner, big thing, and tried out. I auditioned for 92, didn't get it. But I got the triple cast, which was awesome.
John Neighbor was doing it before you. Is that
88? John did it, and then in 92, Mike O'Brien and Mary Waite did it, and they were kind of thrown to the wolves. Never had any kind of experience, and it was tough on them. And I felt really. And if I had done the same thing they had done, I wouldn't be doing commentating anymore. But because I did triple cast, I was able to. Everything was live, no editing. Just down and dirty, you do it and leave, And for me, that really helped me a lot, gain the experience I needed. And then I auditioned in 96 with Greg Gumbel, called some race. They didn't tell me what race. They said, okay, you're just going to call a race. And I got 96 and been doing it ever since.
Like all of you, I work very hard, which is why I always also rest hard. Unwinding, recharging is essential if we want to show up in the world as our best selves. And Cozy Earth is here to help curate your relaxation ritual with game-changing bedding, bath, and loungewear that truly raises the bar on comfort and luxury. Their fabrics are buttery soft. Their pillowcases, duvets, and duvet covers have officially replaced all our home bedding. And their sheets are fantastic, fashioned from temperature-regulating material, which keeps me perfectly comfortable all night long. The quality is also second to none, offering an incredible 10-year warranty on all their products. So here's what you're going to do. Go to CozyEarth.com now for an exclusive discount of 40% off when you use my code RICHROLL at checkout. Or simply hit the link in the description below. What do people not understand or appreciate about how difficult this job is? Because it looks like you're just, you're just cheering or whatever, but there's a lot going on. I got to spend a little bit of time with Craig Hummer. You know Craig Hummer.
I know Craig Hummer very well, very dear friend.
Yeah.
I know you guys
for a very
buddies.
long time.
Yeah.
And he's he was an incredible swimmer, but he most of his broadcasting is in rodeo. It's like he's doing this sport that's
really
totally
good.
different. But he was back here calling swimming for the Olympic Broadcasting.
Yeah.
What is it called? Olympic Broadcasting Network.
Yeah,
OBN.
OBS. World Feed.
And he was just giving me kind of a primer or a quick lesson on like the challenges of you got to know everything about all these people. It's coming at you fast. You got to have it right on your fingertips. Like are you being fed information? Like, how does it work? What are the brass tacks of the process?
So, the criticism is justified a lot sometimes when I don't read the people that live in their parents' basement and
good for
trolls, and I don't read
Nor
that.
Nor should you, Rowdy.
No, I don't read that stuff. I don't read the good stuff very much either. But I get it. Where people say, "God, this guy, what is this guy talking about?" But I challenge people. Sometimes I've had a troll or two that I've heard about and I've invited them to the booth, and it really changes their perspective.
Have at it.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. In fact, we have an auction item every year at our Golden Goggles for USA Swimming, and the item is to commentate a race in the booth at one of the pro swims. And usually it's a person that been a little critical, not all the time, but they go, "Oh my God, I had no idea. I'm so sorry," because that's the pro swim. The reason is you have 3 or 4 people talking into your ear. And you have to listen to all those people while you're talking. So I have my producer. I have Dan, Tommy Roy, our longtime producer, who's the best in the business. I have Mike Unger, who is usually the guy that... Did you ever see that movie, Broadcast News?
Sure.
Holly Hunter and William Hurt. And William Hurt's calling the news. He's really good at doing the news, but he's an idiot.
Right.
And so she's kind of telling him what to say, and he's so good at listening and telling the audience what she's telling him. So he's kind of my Holly Hunter. He doesn't tell me what to say, but he'll say, "Oh, he was 32-3 on that split," and I can say without looking 32-3. Watch lane 8. I can say watch lane 8. So he's talking, and then our director every once in a while chimes in. So I have 3-4 people talking, and sometimes they're all talking at the same time. And they're all asking me a question.
They're all telling me an anxiety attack. Yeah.
So my wife has gone in the booth with me before, and she's listened for like 2 minutes. She has to take the headset off. She can't do it. It creates so much anxiety. But I'm used to it now. But it's a lot to handle. Elizabeth did it with me in Tokyo for the first time, and she'll tell you it's not for the faint of heart. It's not digging ditches, not pulling weeds or whatever, but it's a lot more challenging and difficult than people think when they watch the Rowdy cam or whatever and just say, all I do is get to jump up and down, which I do, but at the same time, I'm listening to people at the same time.
And when Michael comes into the booth, I mean, he's wearing headphones
5
also.
people.
So is Dan... Mike, you're balancing who's talking next. What are they going to say? How are we going to make this all work? Are they hearing something different in their headphones? Or are they hearing the same thing?
No, they don't talk to
hearing?
Michael very much.
I see.
They kind of leave because, again, it's very disorienting if you haven't been able to do that before. I remember Michael early on. He doesn't do this anymore, but early on when we were in Tokyo, the producer would ask him a question, yes or no, and he'd go, "Yeah." Like on the air, because he didn't know that
you forget. You got a hot mic.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but Michael's awesome now. He's such a great expert. But yeah, you have to be prepared for that. So I think for me now and Dan, they know that they can talk to. Dan is he is the GOAT. It is unbelievable. You think
what makes him so good? Like, what is the talent?
Well, the first and foremost talent that he has, Rich, is preparation. When I sit here with you, you are prepared. When I watch your stuff, I go, man, that dude is prepared. He knows more than the guy he's talking to.
But only through preparation.
Right.
You can't, you learn that from swimming too. Like you can't fake, can't, and you don't want to fake it.
No,
like,
and he doesn't fake it. That's why he's so prepared. If you understood what he did, you talk about a day in the life, he will get there in Paris. He got there. Well, first of all, he'd watch prelims, take notes all during prelims, and he'd get there about 1 o'clock, 8:30. I mean, right after prelims, he'd go to the pool. 8:30 is finals, right? And he'd meet from 1 to 4 with our stat people, our researchers. There's 2 of them, along with Mike Unger. But they sit there for 3 hours and talk nothing but that night in finals. And each swimmer who's swimming and kind of the history of that swimmer. And he'd make notes and everything. And then we had a production meeting from 4 to 6. And then he'd go back and take money. He'd spend 6 hours just doing notes,
and
man. The guy is ultimately prepared. And plus, he's so good at talking when I still get flustered sometimes when people are talking to me and count me down. Okay, you need to fix this edit. And we have 5 seconds. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you can see him in lane number 4 doing this. What a great asset he's been to USA Swimming. And they're count me down 5, 4, 3. And I have to end it before Dan talks on the next link. So it's complicated. But the point is, he's so good at it. It's mind-boggling. I get anxiety. I have anxiety listening to him when he has fixes to do. It's a thing of beauty. It really is.
At the same time, I feel like if you were at home watching the Olympics, you'd be yelling at the TV in a similar way, right?
Yeah.
That would still be going on because you are, this incredibly knowledgeable person about the sport and knows how to communicate what's going on in a way that not only informs the public, but gets them excited. But at the same time, you're a super fan and you have personal relationships with like probably all of these people, right? And I would imagine maybe you have favorites or, some of these kids better than others, but you've got to maintain some level of objectivity in the booth at the same time, right?
I do. I get excited about any swimming. I mean, I get more excited about American winning. I'm not going to lie. I do. But you should have seen me when Leon won. I mean, it was so bloody cool. I was jumping up and down just like I did when they showed the other one a couple days ago with the women's relay or mixed relay, I guess it was. I was jumping up and down just as much with Leon. They might not have shown it, but I love great swimming. And Summer McIntosh, I was going crazy. I love it. And but we are broadcasting to primarily an American audience. I'm not doing the world feed. I'm not doing what Craig Hummer's doing. I'm doing in an NBC feed to America. And I'm going to get excited when an American does well. Just the way I am. I'm not going to change.
But even amongst the Americans, because you know all these kids so well.
And I do know some better than others, so I know more about their journey than others. I know, for example, I don't know about Aaron and Alex Shackle's journey. They were brother-sister that made the team this year, very young, 17 and 19. But I know their dad so well. Nick swam for Auburn, Olympian, just a great guy. Love that guy. I've known him forever. So I get a little bit more excited about his kids. I don't know his kids. I met him. We went to Croatia for their camp, spent 3 or 4 days with the camp, and you get to know him a little bit. But I don't know him like I know Reagan Smith. Or like I know Kieran Smith, who swam the 400 men, and Reagan swam the 200 fly that Alex Shackle swam. So, but I got excited about it. I got excited about Alex making that final in the 200 fly. That was cool. It was awesome.
It was cool also to see Michael so excited about Leon. There's something really cool about that. And obviously Leon swims for Bowman and the like, so there's connectivity there.
It was pretty cool, pretty incestuous there, wasn't it? In a way, it was like Bob was his father, and now he's like a brother of Leon, and it was awesome. And so I think that's one reason why he knew so much about the race itself, obviously, and Leon's relationship, Bob's relationship. And so in that 400 IM, I kind of let him do his things. I kind of shut down for the most part. If you listen to that race, I'm not talking very much.
Uncharacteristically quiet.
I know.
Let the GOAT say his
let
piece.
the GOAT do what he does best.
You mentioned Summer McIntosh. I think she is a gigantic breakout star. I think LA 28 is going to be all about her.
She is. She's huge.
She's the whole package.
She is the whole package. And it reminds me a little bit of Kate Douglas, doesn't get real excited about, doesn't have these huge highs or lows. It's very, very consistent, and just one of the true superstars in our sport in the future. 17 years old, got great genes, and is going to continue to have great success.
One of the things that I haven't heard you speak that much about is the fact that in 1991, you contracted Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you say it,
Guillain-Barré.
right? Guillain-Barré.
Yeah.
I said it completely wrong,
most people say
actually.
Guillain-Barré, but it's two French guys that discovered it, actually. Guillain and Barré.
Tell me what that is. I know you spent like 2 months in the hospital and suffered some pretty serious but temporary paralysis.
Yeah, I'm walking around one day and feeling great, and within 24 hours, everything just shut down. You know, it was sort of like I started doing everything in slow motion. I got this tingling feeling in my fingers and toes, like when your foot falls asleep or something, and it just didn't go away. So I thought I was just had the flu or something. I didn't know that it was anything too serious. But my wife, again, the hero that she was, she said, something's wrong, because I was starting to not be able to even walk. And she literally picked me up, put me in the car, took me in the emergency room.
And how compressed of a time period was that?
24
happening?
hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it happens very fast for the most part. Sometimes it's a weird disease, you know, it's an autoimmune disease. It's not something that's contagious, and people still don't know how you get it. It's a lot of people think you've had the flu or cold and it mutates into this virus. I had some doctor tell me I got it from eating sushi in Japan, because I was in Japan the 2 weeks prior. But nobody really knows. But I know what basically there's a myelin sheath that protects your nerves, and it shreds that sheath, so your nerves short circuit. So yeah, I completely paralyzed I spent 3 or 4 months in the hospital, and then got out and had a relapse, and spent another month or so. So yeah, it took a while before I was able to kind of relearn how to do all
your motor skills.
All my motor skills.
How long did that take?
Till I felt completely normal again, about a year, to where I still had tingling. That's never left. I'm used to it now. It doesn't affect me, but it's like when your foot falls or hand falls asleep, I still have those feelings. We had two young children, Emily and Madison, and I got it in 91. Oh yeah, and Savannah must have been born too. She was born no, she wasn't born yet, 94. So that was tough on my family.
How is that treated? Is there some kind of
antiviral? They use a plasmapheresis treatment back then. Again, I don't know the scientific part of it. I wish I had somebody from the Guillain-Barré syndrome organization, but basically it's like a dialysis. They go in with a tube, get all the antibodies out of the blood, and then have it flush back in with clean blood. And so I had to go through that, which was really painful, at least in the beginning. After about 3 or 4 weeks, it started getting less, but it was, had to relearn how to do everything all over again. I didn't be fed. It was just like being paralyzed. You know, I couldn't move anything, but I could feel the pain. It was paralysis, but if you stuck a needle in my hand, it hurt.
Wow.
That was the difference. It wasn't paralysis, like you couldn't feel anything. So the pain was excruciating because the pins and needles feeling was at an all-time high. So when you touch, you know how your foot falls asleep and you kind of slap it and go, that hurts. That's how it was, but times a million.
And is there a risk of recurrence, or are you cured and it's in the past?
I have a higher risk of occurrence, 10 times more likely for it to reoccur than the average person, but it strikes 1 in 100,000 people is the stats on it. So even though I have a more likelihood, I've never had any issues with it. You're not supposed to get a flu shot. I even had a neurologist in fact, when you get your flu shot, it says, have you ever had a Guillain-Barré? And you're not supposed to get a flu shot. But I had a neurologist tell me several years ago, you're fine now. You go ahead and
Here's the ripple, though. After that, this period of time in which you have to relearn all your motor skills. You end up getting back in the pool and you break these age group national records in the 50 free and the 100 free.
Wasn't that big a deal.
Do they still stand? Do you know?
I have no idea.
You don't know. What did you go, like 12,
well,
20,
I was
21?
91. I was 32. So yeah, in fact, that age group, 30 to 34 in master swimming, I broke every world record from 50 to 1500. Of course, there's only 3 people in my age group in master swimming.
But also, I read in 2011, okay, much later, you broke a couple records in the 50 to 54. Yeah. 50, and you went 54. Like 21.3 in the 50 free. You were like 54 years old.
Yeah.
100 meter long course, 54.6.
Yeah,
Do you know if those are those records still around? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know, Rich.
But here's the thing. All right, going back
I'm sure they've been broken.
91, you know, in the wake of that, learning how to move again and do everything.
Same obsession.
You do get back in the pool. And in 96, you qualify for the Olympic trials.
Yeah. I did.
Swimming basically
to swim. I was going to make the team.
Yeah, I know. You end up not competing in trials though.
Right. Because NBC offered me the job.
You made the cut. You were 35. You were the oldest at that time.
Yeah.
You know, and I never hear anyone talking about this.
No, I don't talk about this very often. No. I don't know if I've ever talked about it. But yeah, in 96, I was just swimming masters and I made the cut and I thought, this would be cool. I think I may go to trials just for the fun of it, you know?
Right.
But then I had auditioned already and NBC offered me the job and they kind of said, hey, listen, you can either swim or you can come do work for us. And I said, it's not that important. So I wasn't going to make the team, so.
Your real job is water safety.
Yeah.
You're known for these NBC gigs, but there's a lot of time in between these, right? And I was surprised to hear how much you travel in regards to your responsibilities with Step Into Swim. So let's talk a little bit about like water safety, why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, dude, I'm so glad you asked me about it because it really is my passion now. It breaks my heart when I see a child drown. And we were talking about it before we came in the studio, and I said, a lot of people don't know it's the #1 cause of death in children ages 1 to 4. It's #2 in the 5 to 14 age group.
Is that global or is that U.S.?
U.S. It's worse global. Vietnam, it's through the roof. I get a Google alert every time a child drowns, and I get 4 or 5 a day. And the reason why it's so heartbreaking is because I know how unnecessary it is or how unnecessary it was when I read about it. For the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, it was so unnecessary because if that child had just known and had taken swim lessons, they would have been able to save their own lives. Because the key to life-saving skills for that child to float on their back, that's a natural skill that a child has to be able to float on their back, and it's easily taught. It's not hard to teach a child to do that. And so our goal at Step Into Swimming is to be able to provide that kind of funding to those grant organizations or to those Learn to Swim organizations to be able to provide those children, especially in those low-income areas, the ability to take swim lessons. Because if they take a swim lesson, it reduces that risk of 90%. So I'm not trying to throw too many stats at you, but I beg parents, please, I beg you never take your eye off your child. Because 70 to 80% of drownings happen in front of an adult. We were talking about that. Within 10 feet of that adult. It's because of this. It's because of this right here.
I'm looking at your phone.
Right? That parent becomes distracted. A child can drown in as little as 30 seconds. We don't have time to do that right now, but if I started a stopwatch right now and did 30 seconds, it wouldn't take long. 30 seconds. It can take longer, but it can take as little as 30 seconds. So that parent has to be that first line of defense. Secondly, barriers, which are critical. But the third thing is put your kids in swim lessons because we can't watch our kids 100% of the time. It's been proven. I mean, there's so many drownings happen because a parent, and no fault of their own, but there's distractions in life. And, but if you have that child, they're usually not missing more than a few minutes. And most drownings with children happen with their clothes on. So my granddaughters took this ISR class. You don't have to go that far, but at the end of their course, they put them in the water with all their, in fact, winter clothes, right on their back. Wait 30 seconds, a minute, and the parent's going to be back. And they save a life of incredible heartache. So I'm very proud of our organization and what we've been able to do. We'll give $1.5 million away this year, and hopefully give a lot more in the future.
Yeah, that's great. Drowning doesn't discriminate. If you don't know how to swim, you don't know how to swim. You're at your peril. But it certainly impacts at-risk youth and lower socioeconomic communities that don't have access to swimming pools. We were talking earlier about the fact that it's a systemic issue as much as it is one of parental or personal responsibility, because a lot of these municipal pools are closed. Public pools are, when I was a kid, there were public pools everywhere. There aren't so many anymore. So access is a problem. Affordability is a problem. It's an economic problem. Even if you have a pool in your area, can you afford that? And when you have parents who never learned how to swim, or there's a weird relationship with pools or water, there's an intimidation or some other kind of emotional barrier there, you have to contend with that as well. So it's a complicated issue that I think in order to solve is more than just like, well, we just need to make swim lessons accessible to people, because there's kind of a lot going on right there. And we were also chatting, like I had the opportunity to see Cullen Jones do a panel on this very issue, and also just the issue of inclusion writ large in swimming, right? Like representation matters. There aren't that many people of color in this sport. At this Olympics, we had a couple really interesting stories. Josh Leando, this star ascendant, of course, and Simone Manuel and some other people. But they're few and far between. And I think we need more people like that inspire these young kids, people of color who are living in these communities and don't share that kind of equal access. Because when people see people like Cullen, it inspires them, just like Tiger Woods inspired a generation of young golfers. So.
Yeah, wouldn't it be cool, though, one day that we wouldn't have this conversation?
Yeah,
that's the whole idea.
I would like to not have this. I would like to not have this conversation.
I mean, I had this conversation with other people 20 years ago, and it's a bummer that we're still talking about it. One day, I'd love to be able to just say that's the norm. We don't have to talk about getting more people of color involved in the sport, and we're still not there. We got a long way to go, and this old white guy is not going to be able to help. But somebody like Cullen Jones, who's such a hero to that community and such a hero to the water safety advocacy effort, is a guy that can do it. Simone Manuel can do it. Josh Leando can do it. There's so many out there. Maritza Cry, I can think of a million names that have been so good
Tony
at that.
Irvin.
But I can tell you, our organization really is trying to concentrate on that Black community, that African-American community, especially because an African-American child is much more likely to drown than their Caucasian counterpart, 5 times more likely, in fact. And so we did a study a few years ago, I say we, USA Swimming and the University of Memphis and UNLV, and not to get into the details too much, but they found the number one reason that African Americans don't know how to swim is because it's generational fear. That fear is passed down from one generation to the next. So it was your point just a minute ago that we need to do more on the education part, as well as just giving money out to organizations for swim lessons. We need to change that first and foremost. If you're afraid to swim, please don't be afraid to put your child in swim lessons. But access is incredibly important, because that's the number 2 reason. We want to try to bring the lessons to the children, because these are working parents. It's hard to get to a kid to swim lessons at a local Y. They work. And how do you do that? So we want to try to go to those apartments, those abandoned pools, get them refurbished. And I think our organization, the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance, which is the kind of the governing body of Step Into Swim, is trying to think of ways to do that. How do we rehab pools? How do we get those pools open in those communities?
Yeah. Just driving around Los Angeles, there's tons of them everywhere, and they're just empty.
Crazy.
New York City.
I think that's one of the legacies that LA 28 should really build on. So, Janet, wherever you are, Janet Evans, who's along with Casey Wasserman. If you're listening to me, I want you guys to help me out in this plan here, this 4-year plan.
Have you talked to Casey about this?
I haven't talked to Casey. I've talked to Janet. Yeah. I saw Casey at Charles, but I didn't talk to him. He was too busy. But yeah, I've talked to Janet several times. But it doesn't matter. Whether they partner, they got enough on their plate. It's not going to stop us.
It's such a monumental obligation to pull off LA 28. Can you imagine? Here's what I heard. You probably already know this, but this was news to me. We've seen the news reports that the pool is going to be in SoFi. But
second week.
Right, that's the thing I didn't know. Swimming has always been the first week, and track has always been the second week, and they're flipping it. Like, when was the last time that happened? So they're going to have track in SoFi, and then when that's done, then they're going to build the pool and host the swimming.
No, I don't.
Is that right?
No, maybe. I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding is they're going to have opening ceremonies in SoFi. The track is going to be in the Coliseum.
Oh.
And after opening ceremonies, they're going to build the pool. They have that week to build the pool.
That makes a little more sense.
Because there's no way they can have track.
Can't do that. They can't do that in a day.
No. So I think the track is going to be in the Coliseum, and I think they're going to have the swimming the week after the opening ceremony.
And the village is going to be at UCLA?
I don't know. Good question.
Yeah.
It makes sense to have probably two like we did in '84. We had one at UCLA. The big one was at USC. But I don't know where. It
just occurred to me. It should have struck me immediately earlier. But LA 28 being your last commentating,
Full
84
circle.
being your first Olympics, and as an athlete, there's a real beauty in that. When you think of, we are here for a purpose, there is more going on than maybe we realize. Like, there's a certain poetry to that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great way to wrap things up, Rich. It really will be. LA's such a great town, and I know they're going to do a wonderful job. It was magical in 1984, and I don't expect anything less in 2028.
What is your daily fitness health regime? Like, how do you take care of yourself? Do you get in the pool still?
Swim every day.
Look like? You do?
Yeah.
Every day?
I have an endless pool at my home.
Oh, you do?
And so I swim in, and when I'm at home, I swim in that. But, buddy, I find a pool.
Okay.
Here, no.
Forget about it.
Yeah, it's not happening. But I swim 6 days a week. I'm pretty religious on it, if I can. When I'm traveling to a city, I'll swim in my residence in 20-foot pool if I have to. Just
back
do
and
this,
forth.
I'll do whatever it takes to find a pool. I haven't been able to do it here because of work. But I did swim in the warm-up pool here at the Olympics a couple times. But I swim every day. I don't do anything else. I just swim.
No gym work, no strength training.
I haven't. No.
Cold plunge, sauna, any of that kind of stuff.
I love cold plunge.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I love cold plunge.
Do you have one?
No, but I'm working with a company, Soak, that's going to help me out, I think. And I love it. It's hard. Do you do it?
I do. I love it.
How long? What temperature and how long?
I keep it at 41.
Oh my!
And
get the hell out of here.
Get in for like
you are
just
kidding
like
me.
3 to 5 minutes.
No
and I have
way.
a sauna and I'll go back and forth. But you can build up to it. You can build up to it.
Oh my God!
But you really need like 90 seconds is sort of the minimum effective dose.
Oh, then it was worthless. Yeah. I got in here. They had them at the warm-up pool, and it was 50, and I don't think I lasted.
But the difference between 50
seconds.
and 41, you can't really tell the difference. It's not. When it's cold, it's cold.
So you're recommending it be that cold, 41?
It doesn't have to be. I just keep it that's the lowest. That's the coldest setting.
So you have one at your home, and do you have you say you have a hot tub or jacuzzi?
I have a sauna and the plunge.
Sauna and plunge.
It's a lot easier if you're in the sauna and then you get in the plunge because you're boiling hot.
Yeah,
It's a little bit easier to get in. But.
So you don't do hot tub, but you sauna.
Correct.
Is that better than doing hot tub?
I think it's better. It's better. Huh. Yeah. There's a whole new world waiting for you out there.
I know.
Rowdy.
I can still discover it at 65.
It's coming your way. I have no doubt about that. I have no doubt. The final thing I wanted to ask you about is how all of your experiences have impacted your role as a dad, as a father. Family's clearly like number one priority for you. So being around all these high performers, being an Olympic champion, that can be intimidating for a child, right? Do I have to live up to this? How do you think about how you've parented, being a girl dad and having all these, being in a household of women? I mean, they're grown now, but.
Well, the great line I have is, I play with Barbies and I like it. That's my line.
That will now be the title of this podcast. Right?
A better title is, I sit down to go pee now. That's how bad it is. I've made a lot of mistakes as a father. If I had to do it all over again, I would do things differently. My wife has been the rock. She's been the one that's, been the steady guiding force in choosing the right path. I've been, I travel so much, and it's tough, and so I have to give her a lot of credit. I think maybe my biggest problem and maybe my biggest asset, in the same way, is I have unconditional love for my kids, and that's a two-edged sword, and but it's just being a girl dad. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe part of the problem is I'm still dealing issues with my kid, and I don't want them to suffer in any kind of form or fashion. So I've made mistakes, but I got 4 amazing girls. Yeah, I love each and every one of them. 5 granddaughters that I'm addicted to. Mm-hmm. But none of them really swam. Madison's sitting right over there. She said her line is, "I'd rather eat dirt than swim, Dad."
Yeah. Not interested.
Not interested.
Any athletes or no?
They all played sports, and we had sort of a rule in our house. My wife did, is they had to choose something, an after-school activity. We had one daughter that played in band her whole high school career, and another one that did soccer. Madison was in the drama club for years, and Isabel did stuff, and so they all did stuff. But swimming really wasn't one of them. Our oldest swam for a while in high school and stuff, but nothing real serious. And you're right, it was tough. And I don't think I put pressure on them. I probably should have, but I would kind of remove myself from the swimming. They all tried swimming, but it was like they show up and they go, the peers, "You're not as good as your dad." And what's the deal? Where's your...
Right. Why play in this sandbox where there's always going to be this measuring stick that you could never live up to?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that kind of pressure they just didn't like, so they never really went for it. My wife was better. I think there's a fine line between shoving and nudging. My wife was really good at nudging. She never shoved, but really good at nudging. I was never good at anything, and I should have nudged more.
It's hard. It's hard to know. I feel like we either parent exactly the way our parents parented, or we parent in opposition to them.
That's right.
We all have certain emotional needs that weren't met, right? Yeah. And so when we become a parent, we make this promise to ourselves, like, well, I'm not going to make that mistake. But we often, go too far in the other direction. Like, I'm a huge softie, I think like, maybe I could have been a little bit pretty soft with my kids.
You have 4.
I mean, but I have the unconditional love thing.
Right.
But I'm
you have girls, boys?
2 girls and 2 stepsons.
2 stepsons. So are you a little easier on the boys? A little easier on the girls?
I'm easy on all of them.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy on all of them.
You sound like me.
But then I see, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have laid down the law. I don't know. I just say, I can't find it in me to do it, And they're not.
I'm the same way.
I mean, the boys, played sports on and off, but none of them were seriously into athletics. The girls couldn't care less. They're all artists, musicians, painters, sculptors. They're doing other things. And I want them to pursue their dream in the same way that I was blessed with, the opportunity to do that. Like that's all I want
for them. And those dreams might take longer for some.
They might take longer. They may not manifest.
I try to tell them.
But there is no circumstance in which it's going to be some version of my dream for them. It's not supposed to be that way.
Right. That's exactly right. That's a great philosophy. It can't be your
listen,
way.
I've made a lot of mistakes too. I'm not trying to say like I've got this all figured out. It's hard. It's really hard to be a parent.
I know I don't.
And then they get older, and it's not like the problems go away. They become just more complicated. And then you realize, well, this is just the way it's going to be for as long as I'm alive.
Especially girls.
Yes.
Girls, piece of cake up until about 12, and then they turn 13, and they become the devil. Oh, no, I'm not kidding. They're Satan.
I've lived through this. Yes, I understand.
And then they come back to angels around 18 or 19.
Yeah, they come back around.
Boy,
but
when
you don't think they're going to, and then they do.
think boys, I don't have any, but my sister has 2 boys. They were like the devil until they turned about 13, and then they become great. It's just the opposite for girls. Yeah. In general,
anyway,
don't write to me and say it's not true. I'm just speaking from personal experience. Well, and I'm kidding about Satan, by the way. Don't write me about the devil or anything. I'm kidding.
Yeah, you're going to get in trouble, old man.
I know.
But we have Madison here to keep you safe. She's been running your social media and doing a bang-up job. Like you have won the hearts and minds of millions of people all over the world. The way that you're kind of translating Rowdy's personality into these video clips. I said this to you before the podcast, but I absolutely love it. You're doing a great job.
She's done a great job. She had 3 companies hire her here.
I was going to say, like, after this, you're going to be in high demand. Like, the people are going to want to hire you to do this.
It's good stuff. And I'm not much on social media. That's why I said I followed you for so long on Twitter, and you've kind of drifted away from that. And I just still can't do Instagram or Facebook. But she's done a great job, and it's good. I need to do it. I'm just so guilty.
Do you need to do it?
No, you're right. I don't really need to.
You don't have to. I don't think you have
you're right.
to.
I don't have
to. Only if it's fun and there's something nourishing about it. But I do think I would say that it's enjoyable for someone like me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, to like, I like seeing your videos.
I mean, it's incredible. My wife, I can tell you, dude, I'm serious when I say this. I'm not just saying it. She has been inspired by you. And that's pretty cool to be able to say. And this is my wife. She's not a swimmer, but she talks about some of the great... She's talked to me along the way. And I knew your name, obviously, but I just didn't pay attention. But I told you before we came on, I started doing a deep dive on you last night. I was going, holy shit, this guy's amazing.
Oh, I appreciate that. That means a lot, man. I want to release you back to your life. We're in Paris. We shouldn't be stuck in a studio here. You should be with your family, enjoying yourself.
No problem.
But I'm not going to let you go without just acknowledging this gift that you've blessed all of us with. You have this beautiful, infectious enthusiasm for sport. It comes through the screen, and it allows all of us to not just understand the beauty of the sport of swimming, but to fall in love with sport and this thing that means obviously so much to both of us. And it's a real gift that you have, and you share it so liberally. And I appreciate it, man. And I adore you. I'm a huge fan. And I've been following you, like you, even though we haven't, maybe we met. I don't know if we've ever met.
I think we have met.
We might have met at some meet or somewhere along the way.
Or something.
Well, we definitely met online. We definitely had a couple things over the years online, but I was trying to remember if we actually had met in person. If we had, it was
back in when you were swimming.
Quickly.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But I feel like
now
you're
lifelong
this person who you've been present in my conscious awareness like my entire adult life, right? So it was a real honor to spend this time with you.
Feeling
I
is
appreciate
definitely
it,
mutual, my friend.
Thanks.
Definitely mutual.
Cheers. And if not beforehand, I will definitely see you in Los Angeles in 2028.
You got it, brother.
Yeah. All right. Go enjoy Paris. Peace. Awesome. Yeah.